up, good people? Hey, from the nice folks at Jam Pedals, it is the new version of their Rattler pedal. This goes for the tones of the good old school Proco Rat pedals from the 70s, one of the original hard clip distortion pedals, but it's not just a recreation of a Proco Rat. It's got a couple new features in it in this new version of the pedal. There's a mid boost as well as a switch to go from symmetrical to asymmetrical clipping. That makes it differ from an original Rat pedal as well as the old version of the Rattler pedal. So some really nice new features. Now, a little bit of history about the Rat. Let's see, they came out mid-70s. It was one of the first hard-clipped distortion pedals that you could get. It used a chip called an LM308, I think. Those are getting increasingly hard to get. So they've actually designed a new chip for this pedal and sourced it, and it sounds everybody's good, evidently, and they're much easier to get a hold of. And those original chips, it's kind of funny, because they were actually kind of crap. They were really cheap, and they were sort of legendary for being just kind of crappy. But they did have a sound. When you used it in a hard clip distortion circuit, it was a cool sound that sort of resembled a clipped tube gain stage. And when I think of the early hard clip distortion pedals like a DS1 and MXR Distortion Plus and then the Proco Rat, I sort of think that the Proco Rat, at least for its time, was the best at achieving that amp in a box sound. Like if you wanted tube amp cranked up distortion back in the day, and they've been used by lots of famous folks and, you know, on cool, live shows, recordings. I mean, Jeff Beck used it for a long time. I believe it's a lot on the Guitar Shop album. I'm not sure what else, but I know Jeff used it for quite a while. Also James Hetfield, I think. First few Foo Fighters records, good examples of Rat usage. I think maybe it made its way into some Nirvana stuff. And one of the converts as of late in the last little while that's used a Rat pedal for quite some time now, I think, is actually Nuno Bettencourt to boost into an already dirty Marshall. He boosts a little bit with it, doesn't really add a lot of distortion. He sets the gain or distortion control really low and then has the filter on about half. And as he describes it, it just kind of tightens up his sound and makes it more percussive. So it's kind of like a little tonal secret weapon for him. I thought I would try that approach in this video a little bit. So for some of the sounds, I'm running into the clean channel of my PT100 amp back there, which is super Fendery, and I had it set clean, and this was doing all the distortion. So that would be how I'm sure somebody like, Dave Grohl or something would have used it in the Foos, going from a clean sound to a dirty Rat sound. But for the solo in the song at the beginning of the video, the last lead, the main lead guitar part, I was running into my Sur SL68, and I had it set on about 5. So think, Marshall Plexi on about 5, or JCM 800 on about 5 on the preamp gain. So for a crunch sound, and then I just set the gain really low, up to about a quarter of the way up, filter on about half, volume boosting up around 130, and I kicked the amp with it, and it actually sounded really, really cool for the lead. Now, I mentioned that the pedal has a couple other features in it, because I used one of those features on that lead, the mid-boost feature. So you turn that on, you get a ton of mid-range, thick mid-range, and it kicks into, the distortion circuit on the pedal and gives you a lot of sustain. So I guess I differed from the way Nuno uses it a little bit, because I was adding that mid-circuit that doesn't exist in a Proco Rat, but it just sounded really good. I started off the solo on the single coil pickup, the neck position of my signature HSS custom guitar from Sur, and it just sounded killer with the single coil. I mean, you want to fatten up a neck single coil, this pedal definitely does it with that mid on and the distortion circuit on. And then there's this switch here for symmetrical clipping and asymmetrical. I'm going to show you what that does and what it sounds like. It's a nice option to have. Just sort of spoiler alert, the symmetrical clipping mode sounds a little bit sort of more square wave, a little flatter. The volume drops just a little bit. It's a little more fuzz-like maybe, just a little bit. And then you go to the asymmetrical clipping mode. It's a little bit more, to me, a little more tube amp-like. It's a little more open, a little louder. Seems a little less compressed and overly saturated, just a bit more dynamic. Now, both sounds are cool, though. It just depends on what you're going for. All right, so let's get on to some sound examples so you can really hear what all the controls and what this thing does in front of a couple different amplifiers. It's the new version of the Jam Pedals Rattler. Here we go. So in cutting the first two guitar parts in the song at the beginning of the video, I decided to do the one in the left channel with the asymmetrical clipping and the one in the right channel with the symmetrical clipping so that I could show you the difference. So let's hear the difference between those two guitar parts now. So the asymmetrical clipping to me has a little bit more of an open sound and feel, and maybe sounds a little bit more tube amp like. Symmetrical clipping sounds a little more distorted, a little bit more like a fuzz, really. Right, it's a little bit more Big Muffy, I would say, in the symmetrical clipping, and a little bit more like open and more naturally amp-like in the asymmetrical. That's the way that I hear it anyway, and with the way that I've got the knob set, which is the tone or filter just a little below half, the gain on about 11 o'clock, almost at noon, and the level up around 2 o'clock. So I did a part in kind of the B section of the song where I added the mid boost. So this is a mid boost that kicks into the distortion circuit, I do believe, and this is kind of like an added thing that, you know, no Rat ever had or anything like that. So it's pretty cool. There's actually a trim pot on the inside where you can tweak it. I've just left it as the pedal comes from the factory, which I think is kind of maximum boost. So this part without the boost would sound something like this. When I turn on the mid boost, right, you can hear it's adding like a ton of sustain. I mean, for like pretty much like maximum sustain. Even if you had a little volume going through an amp, you're going to be able to get feedback and sustain. And that's with the gain only on about 1130, really. And that is just like kind of the sort of singing, you know, Rat thing. I know this is a different circuit with the mid boost and everything, but when I think Rat, I kind of think that sound, like lots of mids. It's almost got something akin to a fuzz. 1 foot in the fuzz camp, 1 foot in the distortion camp, really. And I guess that's probably why Gilmour used it for some stuff. You know, it's not dissimilar to, in some ways, a Big Muff with the amount of sustain and fat, you know, sort of liquid texture you can get. Let's explore just for a second the sweep of the tone control as well as the gain pot. Once again, kind of like a Big Muff in some ways, in the massive sort of filter sweep you can get out of the tone control that really allows you to tune in for just about any amplifier. So right now I've got the bright on my amp. So if I turn the pedal off, here's the sound, you know. Sparkly, clean, Fendery. And so that's why, you know, you dial that tone control back a little bit below noon so that it's not searing and taking your head off, and you can find that magic spot. Sounds pretty good right about there. What happens if I turn the bright off on my amp? So a little darker sound now. So once again, just by going from 11 o'clock to about 1 o'clock on that tone knob, lots of sweep and range in there, and I was able to compensate for turning off the bright switch on the amp. Let me turn the bright back on. Now, with the asymmetrical clipping versus symmetrical, you can kind of mess with, you know, a little bit more open tube amp-like sounds at lower gain settings. That's pretty cool. It's like a, it's still a hard clip sound, but we're veering more into overdrive territory, I think, with the asymmetrical clipping. Once again, you go to symmetrical clipping, it seems to flatten out a little bit, get a little bit more fuzz-like. So that's cool. You can play with that and get, cleaner sounds, dirtier sounds, more fuzzy, more distorted, whatever you want. So for the lead on the song at the beginning of the video, I wanted to try something different. For all the other guitar parts in that song, I've been using the PT100 on the clean channel. So Fendery clean, and the pedal for all the distortion and drive. I know Nuno Betancourt uses the Rat pedal. It's kind of like a secret tone weapon in front of Marshall amps that are set crunchy to kind of tighten them up. But it's a little different than using like a Tube Screamer or a Super Overdrive or one of those pedals, because those are all soft clipping. This is a hard clipping pedal. Traditionally, I've sort of thought hard clipping pedals in front of gainy amplifiers can sound a little sloppy, and it's a bit much usually. But if you set this pedal just right, it works really quite well. So I've got the gain low, around 9 o'clock. Levels boosted up to around 130 for a bit of kick into the front of the amp, and then you just set the filter to taste. Here's the raw amp tone, just kind of set crunchy. Like a typical Marshall Plexi on, 5 or 6, or maybe like a JCM 800 on 6, something like that. That sort of sound. Now, if we turn on the pedal, lots of hot, juicy gain. It's not too sloppy. It's cool. It's got a definitely kind of a boosted, almost like a poor man's Jose Marshall or something going on when you use it like this. Now, the symmetrical and asymmetrical switch makes a big difference. So let's check that out. The asymmetrical sounds may be more transparent, more like a tube gain stage. Symmetrical is a little flatter sounding, a little bit more, sounds like diode clipping, but it's cool in its own way. It's more compressed, and I actually used the symmetrical clipping sound for the solo because it just kind of flattened things out, square waved things a bit more, and it worked for the sound I wanted, just kind of like tons of sustain and easy to play. Now, I also used the mid boost. Okay, so let's turn that on. I'll show you how much that adds, because that's something you can't even do on a Rat pedal. They don't have them. Endless sustain, tons of gain. You can hear there's a fair amount of hiss, but that's just, I got so much gain going right now. But it sounds really great. I mean, it almost makes the next single coil sound like a humbucker with that much sustain and stuff. And with all those mids and everything, fattens up single coil really nice too. So that's the sound that I used for the lead, and really dug it. Thanks for watching my video on the Jam Pedals Rattler. Just killer sounding, hard clipped distortion unit that goes for those great tones of yore of the Proco Rat pedal, but adding a few new features, that clipping switch there that gets you a couple different sounds, as well as a really, really cool mid boost. Whether you're running into a clean amp, like something like a Deluxe Reverb or an AC30, and you want to get some really cool kind of indie rock distortion bordering on fuzz, or maybe you want to boost into a Marshall and tighten it up like Nuno does, Jam Pedals Rattler has you covered. Alright, you can check it out further at that link in the video description below. Click there, it'll take you to more info about this fine pedal. Please hit subscribe if you haven't subscribed to my channel. Please hit the thumbs up on the video if you dug it, I really appreciate it. And hey, I'm Pete Thorne, I'll see you real soon. Take care.